Okay, well, that is my cue to get started. Good morning and welcome to June's revolving topic training on reporting and supporting documentation. I am Caitlin Justice and I am with the Office of Accountability here at DCEO. As you heard, this presentation will be recorded and we will be sending out the slides and recording later on this afternoon for everybody that has signed up for the revolving topic trainings. We are also monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat. Jason will be monitoring that for me, and we'll have time at the end to address any of those questions that are posted in there. And I think that's all for the announcement side of it. Jason will try to go through and answer the questions as they come on, but again, we can address those at the end as well. So we will go ahead and get started. So in today's presentation, we're going to cover the purpose of reporting and how it plays a vital role in the grant process. We're going to break down the different types of reports that grantees are responsible for, including the how, when, and where to submit. We're also going to explain the supporting documentation that's needed to accompany those reports. And then we'll wrap up by sharing some tips and some best practices for reporting and where to find some helpful resources for you. So on this slide, you can see the grant process for a competitive grant. So after the execution of your grant agreement, you are going to move to the reporting stage of the process. So this reporting stage, this is where you as the grantee is to comply with the requirements established in that executed grant agreement, which includes the completion and submission of the periodic performance reports, which we call PPRs for short, and periodic financial reports, which are the PFRs. So we're going to go get into further detail on both of those reports so everyone will have a clear understanding of what both of those reports require. So why does DCEO require grant reporting? Grant reporting helps DCEO measure and monitor the achievement of grant goals. So those grant goals are established between the grantor, which is DCEO, and the grantee, which is you, the entity. So all grant awards are subject to periodic reporting unless it's statutorily exempt or an exemption is approved by the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit at the Governor's Office of Management and Budget, as well as being documented in the Catalog of State Financial Assistance and in the Uniform Grant Agreement. That was a mouthful. So, reporting also allows DCEO to assess potential risk. We can measure progress of the grant funded project, and we can determine the level of the grantee's compliance. So this periodic reporting can assure that the grantor, DCEO, that the grantees are providing accurate documentation of grant expenditures, the money is being spent as allocated, and the grant requirements are being met. The frequency of reporting is determined by your entity's compliance, financial history, or program requirement. It may be specified in the program that the reports have to be due monthly or quarterly. So that will be laid out for you. So reporting dates are listed in your executed grant agreement. So this is just a note and a tip to be sure that you highlight those reporting periods and those deadlines so you can avoid any non-compliance issues. Um, so those reporting requirements help us to provide additional layers of assurance and control over the grant programs so we can help identify any issues and be proactive about seeking solutions to ensure grantee success. So what does the grant reporting process entail? So reporting is used by all state agencies to collect performance and financial information from the recipients of state grant awards. So Illinois as a state has adopted the Code of Federal Regulations, which we refer to as 2 CFR Part 200. And those reporting requirements can be found in the link on the slide as well as in the chat. So all grantees complete grant reports during the administration phase of the grant. So the uniform reporting templates include the periodic performance report, which is that PPR, and the periodic financial report, the PFR. So we use both of those reports in conjunction with each other to ensure that performance, or what we call deliverables, align with the reported financial expenditures. And just to note, there are some grant programs that also require a ledger to be completed and submitted in addition to that PPR and PFR. And we'll get more into that in a later slide. Grantees must also submit supporting documentation for those grant expenditures that are described in the PFR and PPR reports. So we'll go into more about supporting documentation later in the presentation as well. So you can get a clear picture of what can be included and permissible for supporting documentation. So first up, we are going to dive into the periodic financial report, or the PFR. So the periodic financial report, it measures a grantee's financial expenditures and how those expenditures relate to the overall goals and objectives that were outlined in the Uniform Grant Agreement. So these reports are in Microsoft Excel. This is a screenshot on the slide from a Microsoft Excel, the version of that. So you can kind of see an outline of what that form looks like if you have never completed a report before. So this gives you an example of what this looks like. So in that document, in the workbook, there are tabs located at the bottom, which the first tab is going to be the instructions. So that's going to inform you how to complete the report. The second tab is a listing of definitions. So as you can see on this slide, there are sections labeled with letters. So in the definitions, all of those that are described with letters gives a clear definition so you know what to include in that box when you're filling it out. The third tab in the workbook is the actual report. So that's where you're going to be inputting your information for that reporting period. And then the final tab of the workbook is the report certification, or a signature page, which you just sign and verify that you've included all the appropriate expenditures in the document. So just want to remind everybody, it's very important to read through the instructions so you have a clear understanding of what to include in the report. And of course, if any questions come up, your first line of contact is that grant manager that has sent you the reporting templates. They are your first line of contact to answer any questions when it comes to the reporting. You can reach out to us here at the help desk if you have any technical difficulties or questions like that. We can help you out or direct you back to the program in which you are submitting those reports for. And I just want to note here too, so if you were a previous grantee, you may remember that these reports were in PDF. So we are transitioning from PDF to Excel. It's a little bit easier to use with the formulas, and we were having some issues with grantees with Adobe. So we have transitioned over to using Microsoft Excel. So if you are a past grantee and you're on and we're like, well, this doesn't look like the report I have, we are in transition. So if you're a current grantee and still using the PDF, that's perfectly fine. But if you are selected for an award again, you may realize that this is going to be in a different form. So each data element of the template is assigned a letter which correlates to the definitions tab, which I just mentioned. So in this example on the slide, the definitions will explain what to input in the box for section A, which is grantee name. So you just need to make sure that the name of the grantee is as exactly stated as it is in the Uniform Grant Agreement. So if you go by ABC Roofing, but in your Uniform grant agreement, it says Alpha Beta Company Roofing. You need to make sure you have your full legal name printed as exactly as it is in the Uniform Grant Agreement. So in this example, in the PFR template section A, you're going to go ahead and type in that Alpha Beta Company Roofing exactly as it appears. And then there are some instances, some of our grant program offices here at DCEO pre-fill this information for you. Some do and some don't. So we just wanted to make it clear that you may be having to fill this information in, or whenever your grant manager sends you the templates, they may have completed it for you. So as you're moving through the PFR template, you just want to be sure you're using the correct reporting periods that's stated in your grant agreement. So on the template, you're also going to see a box to check if there were no changes from your prior reporting period or there were no new expenses for this reporting period. So I have both of those highlighted in red. So you want to make sure that your dates correlate with the correct reporting period. And if there are no changes on the report you're submitting, you're just going to check that box. So this section of the PFR corresponds to the approved budget expenditures and the approved amounts for your grant award. So in column X, which is bordered in red, this is the category program expenses column. You're going to add each budget expenditure category and the approved budget amount in column Y, which is the green border. And then the approved budget amounts and categories are taken from the approved uniform budget template that was submitted with your application package. So the remaining balance and the expend percentage will auto-formulate based on the amounts entered in section Z, which is noted with the blue border. So that section Z is where you'll complete the current period grant expense, your prior approved grant expenses, and the adjustment. The post-adjustment grant experiences is auto-calculated based on the sum of the current grant period expenses and your prior grant expenses and adjustments. So a lot of that is formulated for you already. So once you've entered all the reporting information, the authorized signatory or the designee will need to sign and date for the report to be submitted to your grant manager. So sometimes the need arises to make changes or additions to that authorized signatory or designee. You do have the option to do so, and you can facilitate that with your grant manager. So if you're not familiar what the authorized signatory is, so that is essentially the head person, your CEO equivalent, or your mayor, your village president. They are the authorized designee, or they are the authorized signatory, excuse me, and then they can designate an authorized designee to sign in their absence. So that can be done just talking with your grant manager and having a couple, I think a form to fill out, and just to make sure that it's available to and completed. So that way, say your village president is out of the country on vacation and the reports are due and need to be submitted, so they can fill out the form for an authorized designee and have somebody sign in their absence. So just those people are the ones that can sign the reports. And I think I just saw a question come up in the chat. I'm going to address this while we're on the signatory page. So is there a way for an electronic signatures? Yes. So they can be provided electronically. And it should also be advised that any deviation from the instructions can result in delays for approval of your report. So you just want to make sure you're following those instructions, you're submitting them to your appropriate grant manager on time, And I also want to point out too, the due dates of the reports. Your grant manager has several grantees that are also submitting reports. So if they are not able to get back to you right away, just know that they are working through their caseload and they do have a lot of reports that are probably due on or around that same date. So just to put that in your ear that you may not hear back immediately, but just be advised that it would be coming. Another question came up about the signatory. So my understanding is that the quarterly reports can have electronic signatures, but the final reports have to have a wet signature. So with the final or the closeout reports, I think that's what you're referring to. I'll have to double check that, but I was under the impression that it can be digital, but I will get that verified for you. I know whenever you're executing your grant agreement, that has to have a wet signature. But Amy, I will get back to you on that final closeout report and let everyone know when I send out the slides what that answer is to that. I'll verify that for you. So that was the PFR. So now we're going to transition over to the PPR, which is the Periodic Performance Report. So same type of template, it's still in Excel. And this report is used to collect performance information from recipients of state grant awards. So this is where you're going to input your deliverables, and those deliverables can look different depending on your grant award. So some examples of deliverables can include conducting a workshop, purchasing equipment, or hiring contractors. And then your deliverables are specific to your grant, and those can be found in your grant agreement and Exhibit A. So that way you know what you need to report on. So like the PFR, you'll see that the periodic performance report begins with instructions for completing the reporting template, a tab for definitions for each section of the report, and then the actual report and the certification. So just remember that you'll need to complete each section if it's not already pre-filled for you by your grant manager. So when you're inserting information in the PPR in sections 14 through 22 of the template, the text is going to wrap in each cell. So you'll have ample room to enter your deliverables into column 14 and your explanation in column 17. However, if the need arises and you need to submit an alternative file or a database for the deliverable, you can check that box, which is listed on the top of the screen grab that says alternative file or database used. So you just put a little check there and then you'll come down to the next row and you're going to enter that file name or the database source. But for the most part, whenever you're entering the information on the PPR, you should have ample room to type in exactly what you need to include. If you do need further assistance with that, you can reach out to your grant manager and we can help facilitate if they need to expand a row or have larger rows for you. We've done that before for different programs. So after the data has been entered for the periodic performance reporting template, it also needs to be signed by that authorized signatory or the designee prior to submission. And I see it, I'm looking at the chat too. So Nate asked, is there a link to these templates? He joined a few minutes late. So usually the grant manager will send the templates to the grantee. So we do not have them available outside to for entities, but Nate, if you are a DCEO employee, which I think you may be, we have them located on the grant management resource site for internal employees. So, but for the most part, usually the program has the specific reports, and if not, you can send us an email and I can show you where those are or help you locate it. Oh yeah, you saw something in the SharePoint. Yep. I can follow up with you after this presentation and I can tell you where those are so you can find those. But if you are a grantee, just know that your assigned grant manager will send you the appropriate templates to you, that you will send them via email. Now I'm going to hit on the ledger. So I mentioned this earlier. So some grant program offices here at DCEO require their grantees to also submit a ledger with their PFR and PPR. So if it is required by the grant programs, you will also need to prepare and submit the ledger with your reporting templates and that supporting documentation. So what this ledger is an expense tracker that demonstrates amounts spent per expenditure category. So this also comes in Excel format and it's to accompany the PFR. So in that ledger, grantees are going to report on the expenses they are seeking reimbursement for. So there's no need to include any expenses that are paid by outside sources. So this is just an example of a ledger that one of our grant program offices use so you can get an idea of what that looks like. So within that ledger workbook are sheets that auto-populate to this grant summary. So for example, if you have an invoice for design and engineering, you're going to enter that information in the 1205 category row for design and engineering. And then the amount that was charged to the grant column will auto-populate to the grant summary located on the first tab of the workbook. So on the slide, you'll see at the very top, I have it bordered in red. So that is pulled from inside the workbook of what the cost was, the expenditure. So they charged $5,000 for architectural drawings for a new cultural center. So since I input that amount into the workbook, it's going to roll up to this ledger, which is the summary that you see bordered in like a navy blue color. And you see that $5,000 has been added to the current reporting column. So that's where that rolls up to it. So it automatically formulates back to that grant summary page. And like I said, the ledger will need to be submitted with the report for each reporting period. It's not just a one-time thing, so it has to be submitted as well. We've talked about reporting schedules. So how do you know when to submit and what are the dates covered by that reporting period? I touched on that earlier when we were talking about the PFR. So this is what it looks like in your executed grant agreement. I know there's a lot of red on this page, but I just wanted to highlight so you can see how it's broken down for you. So on this slide, you can see for May of 2022, here's my reporting period dates. So the underlined of January 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2022. And I have to submit that by May 2nd of 2022. So, and who do I send it to? The grant manager that that was designated in the uniform grant agreement. So you can see each report is due on the same day. So for May, your periodic financial report and your periodic performance report are both due on May 2nd of 2022. They cover the same reporting period and they both have to be submitted to that grant manager. So that's how you can read your reporting schedule. So you know, just want to highlight that you, as a hot tip, put it on your calendar so that way you know when the due date is, what your reporting period's covered, so that way you won't be out of compliance or late on submitting those reports. So along with your reporting templates, grantees also need to include proper supporting documentation. So supporting documentation allows the grant managers to confirm and authenticate the information provided is accurate and directly related to the grant expenditure. So supporting documentation helps grant managers to confirm the accuracy of reports, identify any performance issues, which can help with the implementation of corrective action. So when you as a grantee begin expending funds for your grant project, you should be maintaining that documentation of your entire project from start to completion to accurately reflect what you're reporting in your PFR and PPR. So we also use that supporting documentation for grant monitoring and for record retention. So my advice is have a file folder, keep everything that you used and spent, any invoices, things like that, keep them all together so you have all of that information together and ready to go. So for periodic financial reporting, grant managers will review the grant expenditures to verify if documents adequately support the expenses. So grant managers will review the source of the supporting documents. And they will ask themselves, do these documents include evidence from outside parties? For the periodic performance reporting, grant managers will review documents to verify that the grantee performed in accordance with the performance standards set forth in their grant agreement, which can be found in Exhibit D. So on this slide, we're going to give you some examples of supporting documentation for the verification of deliverables. So that can include a copy of flyers, ads, or posts, event dates or descriptions, a participant listing, a number of attendees, or an attendee sign-in sheet. If you're doing a capital project, that could include photographs of that project, and any other documentation that will support the satisfaction of those requirements. So when you're submitting that supporting documentation, I also want to point out it's important that you need to include your entity name, your grant number, and your reporting dates on that supporting documentation. That way, if it's submitted and it has sometimes it has wonky file names, and it's just easier to identify that that supporting documentation goes with this report that was due in May versus one that was submitted maybe in March or something like that. So just make sure to include identifying information on that supporting documentation. So when you're gathering and submitting your supporting documentation, just be aware of where the supporting documentation is being sourced from. So an internally sourced document originates within the company. So an example would be employee timesheets. An internally sourced document that originates outside of the company would be a bank statement for proof of payment. So this is the type of source document that is ideal documentation for our purposes. An externally sourced document that originates outside of the company. An example of that would be an itemized invoice. So this is the best possible document one can obtain, but here at DCEO, we're not going to reach out to third parties to obtain that documentation for you. It's vital to have an open dialogue with your grant manager on supporting documentation. The type of supporting documents can depend on what the grant is, the scope of work, and the grantee's environment. So just remember that supporting documentation is needed for proof of service and proof of payment. Your grant manager will need to verify that work has been completed and what you are saying has been accomplished. So these are some items on the slide that'll help guide you as the grantee on what should be considered vital information in your supporting documentation. So obviously we're going to look at dates, the service dates, if it's listed in an itemized fashion, an invoice versus a quote, different accounts and the amounts. We're going to look at an address to make sure the work's happening at the appropriate address. And we do have on there bolded late fees and cancellation fees. If those are included on your documentation, they cannot be reimbursed for. So we do not reimburse for late fees or cancellation fees. So now I'm going to show you some examples of acceptable documents based on your grant awards expenditure categories. So for construction projects, supporting documentations can include signed and dated contracts, lien waivers from contractors or subcontractors, proof of payment, bank statements, canceled checks, credit card statements, and quotes or bids depending on the total amount of the contract. So when a grantee is purchasing items or services, supporting documentation can include deeds if land is purchased, a title or deed if a building is purchased, a contract for the purchase, loan documents from the bank if applicable. Any other purchases aside from land or a building can include an itemized bill or invoice, proof of delivery or service completion, quotes or bids depending on the total amount of the contract, proof of payment, bank statement, canceled checks, and or credit card statements. So for payroll, we could include signed timesheets or system produced and approved timesheets. You'll also need to take into consideration holiday, vacation, sick if an employee did not spend 100% of their work on the grant project. That time must be allocated proportionally. A canceled check, bank statement, or verification that the employee is on direct deposit. That could also be a payroll system screenshot. You need to include hours worked and the hourly rate employees were paid to reimburse the rate allowed by the grant or the actual pay rate, whichever is less. And this is a continuation of payroll, but just remember that reimbursement must be based on the rate the employee was paid at the time the work was completed and not the rate that the employee is paid currently. So fringe documentation can include insurance invoices or an employer's quarterly tax return, which is typically the Form 941. So now we've seen reporting templates, reporting schedule, but what happens if we're to miss your due date or become non-compliant with your reports? What happens then? So we have a statewide framework, which is called the Grantee Compliance Enforcement System, and it helps state agencies to manage occurrences of non-compliance with grant requirements. We get it, things happen, people are out of office, reports don't get submitted on time. So this is why we've implemented this framework to help facilitate these instances. So if a grantee were to become non-compliant with grant reporting, these are the steps that occur. So first, and as a little warning bell, the grantee contact will receive a notification 7 days prior to the reporting due date. If that report is not submitted by the due date, a notification is then sent 1 day past the due date. If it's been 15 days past the reporting deadline, another letter is generated, which we call the cash shutoff letter, and the grantee is then FEIN locked. So what happens in FEIN lock? So in FEIN lock, no funds will be dispersed from the locking agency and no modifications can be made to current grant agreements. If the report is not submitted 15 days from the date of the cash shutoff letter, then the grantee is placed on the Illinois Stop Payment List and will not receive any funds from any state agency and cannot make any modifications to current grant agreements. And then the grantee will stay on the Illinois Stop Payment List until the reports have been submitted and approved by the grant manager. If you happen to find yourself on the Illinois Stop Payment List, you can log into your GATA portal to see that status and check your status to make sure that you are in compliance, or if you're on the list, you'll have a notification in your portal and it'll show you which agency has put you on the Illinois Stop Payment List and who to contact to help remedy the issue and what you need to do to get off of that list. We find that a lot here in our help desk. We get a lot of questions. You're like, we're on the stop payment list and we don't know why. So that's when you can reach out to us at DCEO and we can help you and provide you those answers and help to get you back off the list. So, and once you log into the portal and you see that you're on the stop payment list, you'll see it in big highlighted in red. So that way it kind of jumps out at you like, oh, hey, there's something going on here. I need to fix this. So that's where you can find that information about the stop payment list about your entity. Um, we also have a training video that helps explain reporting and also non-compliance as well. We have about 23 videos now, I think, available, and we'll put those links into the chat a little bit later on. We have a bunch of resources that I want to share, but I just wanted to highlight that too. If you wanted to learn more about the non-compliance and the grantee enforcement system, we do have further information on that. So as we wrap up on reporting, I do want to share some tips with you. Like I stated earlier, just be sure to read all the instructions for the reporting templates, as well as any communication from your grant manager. Try to stay on top of things if your grant manager is asking for more detail or they need additional supporting documentation. Try to get that back as quickly as possible, so that way you can stay on an appropriate timeline and you won't have to worry about the non-compliance. So just be sure to keep that top of mind. And we went into the authorized signatory or authorized designee. Just make sure those are the people signing the reports. And I will follow up with you on the closeout report to let you know what type of signature is allowable for the closeout report. So that will be coming later. And then another tip is just to make sure that your expenditure categories are consistent with your approved grant budget. It always helps to have a second set of eyes and do a double check before you send in your reports. So just that everybody's on the same page. And I know it can kind of get dizzying when you're inputting numbers and just making sure you haven't transposed anything. So it's always good to check and recheck. I'm a big follower of calendar reminders, so plug those in on maybe your email calendar for your due dates. They come up quickly, so just make sure that you and your team members are aware of those dates so you can make plans. If you're going to be out of office, you're going to need to submit those still on a timely manner. So just make sure that you have those dates highlighted and are aware of those. And then my last tip for you, so when you're submitting your PPR and PFR, the templates are to be cumulative, not separate. So each month or quarter when your reports are due, you'll continue just making those small updates, which is like your reporting period, and just making sure that all the information has been submitted that's been requested. I mentioned resources. So we have a plethora of resources available to you as the grantee throughout your grant experience. As always, your first line of contact is your grant manager. They can answer specific questions about your particular grant. However, if you are facing any technical difficulties or have questions regarding like pre-qualification or things like that, we do operate a help desk. It's a virtual help desk, and that email is listed on the slide. It's monitored during regular business hours. So if you have any questions, you can send an email off to the help desk and we can help you. There are some questions that we get that are program specific, so we do kind of have to relay those back to the program. We're more of a general help desk, but we can definitely point you in the right direction. The bit.ly on the screen will take you to our grantee resource site. So that's where I mentioned we have those video trainings are on there. We have quick reference guides or PDFs. If it's directly related to a video that we've done a training on, we tried to include those resources under that specific video. So you can go through and see additional resources after you've watched the video. I think there's about, 23 on there now, and we're still working on more to be included on that listing. So especially if you're a new grantee or you're just starting to apply for grants or state grants, it's a great point to start at. Just it kind of gives you the big picture view of what to expect. There's a lot that goes into running a grant, and I will say applying is the easy part. It's the implementation and the reporting and the auditing that I think a lot of people can kind of get tripped up on. So by reviewing those videos and just being aware of the instances that happen and the process will definitely set you up for success. So and then thank you for joining us today. We have these trainings we offer monthly. We do on the third Wednesday of the month is revolving topic. So that's what today's topic is, one of our revolving topics. We have a whole schedule planned out throughout the end of the year of different grant related topics. We host all of these virtually. They are recorded and we do place them back on our grantee resource site. So if you wanted to refer back to it, those are online for you. If you wanted to, you've listened today and be like, oh, hey, I think my coworker really needs to sit in on this and listen to this, they can go up and we'll get that posted on the website too. And also encourage them to sign up for our trainings if you think it'd be a benefit for them to sit in on our topics as well. Each month we also host a pre-qualification training, and that one happens on the first Wednesday of the month. It is the same training every month, so nothing's different. So if you've attended one, there's no new information that's coming forth. I mean, you can attend again if you'd like for a refresher, but we do have a video training on that as well too on our website. And then we host weekly office hours every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. There's no formal presentation during those office hours. It's simply log on, ask any questions that you have that maybe you need more clarification on, or you need us to walk you through a process. I know in our office hours yesterday, we had a participant asking about how to register in the GATA portal. So we kind of walk you through those steps and share the resources that we have. Like we have a get started guide for registering in the portal. We have a video coming soon. So that's what those office hours are more geared towards. And we do get some instances where we get very specific program questions where we kind of have to take those offline and get the program involved. Again, we're a general help desk and we don't work on the program side. So we're not in the day-to-day of grant management. So we like to pull in those experts or your grant manager to give you that clarifying information that's needed. So Jason has put into the chat any of those links that are provided. So if you just wanted to go ahead and click on those or bookmark those, I think that should be it for the links. That last link on there, the ceo.granthelp@illinois.gov is our help desk. So that you can email that. Oh, and so I mentioned our upcoming training. So this is what we have on the docket for July. So pre-qualification training will be July 2nd. And that all of our trainings take place at 9 a.m. for pre-qualification and revolving topic. And then office hours every Tuesday at 2. And then revolving topic for July will be indirect cost rates. So also wanted to point out, if you are signed up to receive the invitations for revolving topic, you are on our distribution list. So if you can attend, you'll still receive the recording and slides. So we send that out to everybody that's been signed up. So, so don't fret if you miss it. You'll get an email with that, and as well, it'll be posted back onto the DCEO website too, if you wanted to refer back to that. And then I'll end with our help desk email. So if you have any questions that maybe you didn't think of right away and you have something that comes up you need to ask, feel free to send us an email and we can get that taken care of. I'm going to go back through the chat now. I think Jason's been busy in there, so I just want to make sure. 15 days. Oh, okay. So this question from Robin goes back to when I was talking about non-compliance. So it said 15 days are actual calendar days, correct? And yes, I believe that is to be correct. So 15 calendar days from the date of the letter that you're sent. So that cash shutoff letter. And Jason put in the links to the grantee compliance enforcement system and the link to our video library. Oh, and he did answer Robin, thank you. Ramon, will we get a copy of this webinar? We have not received a copy of the last webinar, thank you in advance. So Ramon, if you're, we send it to the email that was signed up for this listing. So if you are on this invite list and received the calendar invitation, then you should be getting the webinar. It is recorded. We record all of them. I will double check the distribution list to make sure that you are on there and make sure that you get this one. Also, it's going to be posted on our DCEO website too. So you can always go back to our trainings page and rewatch. And Jason linked that for you. Okay, I think that's it. That's all I have for today. Hope you all enjoyed it and were able to learn a little bit more about grantee reporting and the supporting documentation that goes along with that. I'm just giving you the tip. I would read the instructions thoroughly, ask questions. We don't want you kind of just sitting out there not knowing. We would rather you ask and have us point you in the correct direction. So feel free to reach out to your grant manager, reach out to the help desk. That's what we're here for. We're here to provide those resources for you and help to make you a successful grantee, because your successfulness as a grantee reflects back on us as a grantor. So we want everybody to be happy and compliant and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's what these trainings are geared toward, just so that we make sure we're getting the information out to our grantees so they're prepared and ready when it comes time to start the reporting process. So that's all I have today, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining.